What we did in this bill is we made permanent the 2017 Trump's tax cuts, and that was geared for lower and middle class Americans. This is a great thing for people who go to work every day, and they're going to feel that.
Right, that's the Speaker of the House of Representatives telling you that this big, beautiful bill of the president's was, and the one that passed his House of Representatives twice, was written for working class Americans. The Speaker going on to his X account saying this: if you work for a living, this bill was written for you.
Yeah.
Although he should have said for you. For some reason, the "for" was capitalized, so that's only one of the issues I have with Speaker Johnson. In reality, though, this bill is for corporate American. It is stuffed with corporate America. It is stuffed completely with handouts to corporate America. We have the receipts thanks to reporting by Sludge. Before we get to that, Cenk, your big, beautiful thoughts.
Yeah, so look, guys, the Democrats say they're going to do a bunch of policies that are actually really popular, like paid family leave, higher minimum wage. You guys know the list, and then they don't, and it's super frustrating. And in fact, one of the things that Biden did, he got so much credit for, is in this list. They've actually added to it. So we'll touch on the Democrats a little bit in a minute, but Republicans always tell you that they care about the debt. It's a monstrous lie. Never been true my whole life. I used to be Republican. It's one of the reasons I left the Republican Party. So this one adds another 3.3 trillion to the debt because they don't care. The only thing they care about, as I tell you all the time, tax cuts for the rich and giveaways to corporate donors. And the corporations matter more because they're the #1 set of donors. So that's why you're going to see in this bill, as they pretended to be populist, they loaded it up with corporate pork because that's what the Uniparty does. But specifically the Republicans have always been the party of big business. And so it's not surprising that they didn't deliver for you. They delivered for big business, as you're about to find out.
That's not what Speaker Johnson said, Cenk, so I don't know where you're coming up with that. Yeah, this bill that he said was for working people. If you're a working person, if you go to work for a living, this bill is for you. Well, let's go through that, because here are, and we're gonna go through them sort of gradually here, all of the industries that got a handout in Trump's budget. We're going to start with big business in general, right? Thanks to the restoration of 100% bonus depreciation. That lets companies write off the cost of investments like machinery and equipment. The fossil fuel and construction industries are both happy to see the policy restored, and even companies like Meta. You'll recall Mark Zuckerberg at the inauguration on January 20th, and people saying, how could you do that? Well, this is it. This is it coming home to roost. Companies like Meta have benefited from this policy in the past and will now. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Manufacturers, two major lobbying groups, worked hard to get this policy implemented. So there you have it for them. The second big winner, and you'll be shocked to hear this, Big Pharma. Can you believe it? Big Pharma did well in Congress. Trump's budget bill includes the Orphan Cares Act, and thanks to that legislation, more drugs will be exempted from price negotiation with Medicaid. In short, drugs that treat a single rare disease that are already exempted, the Orphan Cares Act will also exempt drugs that treat a few rare diseases. Big Pharma's major trade groups lobbied to get that legislation included in the bill. High five, Big Pharma. The third big winner is oil and gas drillers. I mean, this is just a hall of fame of people you want to see do well in Congress. Listen to this. The language directs the IRS to factor intangible drilling costs. Could it be any more vague? Related to the exploration and development of oil and gas when determining corporate alternative minimum tax liabilities. So this is a way of getting around paying tax on something called intangible drilling costs, which you could say is anything, right? We had to go out and buy, whatever. We had to buy drill bits from all of our friends, and we'll just write those off. Also, it will significantly lower the book profits used to assess if a company owes the 15% minimum corporate tax, effectively gutting it for oil and gas producers. And you wonder why Republicans are so popular in Texas, because that is where the industry is based, in Texas and Oklahoma. The tax carve-out was added to the bill by Senator James Lankford. from Oklahoma. The oil and gas industry is his #1 career industry donor. The American Petroleum Institute pushed hard for the carve-out. ExxonMobil and Chevron are members of that lobbying group. How'd they get into the American Petroleum Institute? The fourth big winner, and we were hoping this would work out, is the gun industry. Thank goodness. The budget bill scraps a $200 federal tax on firearm silencers and short barrel rifles, because what citizen doesn't need a silencer and a short barrel rifle? In the Senate, that measure was pushed by John Cornyn of Texas, who secured its inclusion after benefiting from nearly $400,000 of NRA victory fund spending during his most recent election to Congress. Cornyn has also received at least $345,000 in campaign contributions from gun rights interests, making him the 4th highest recipient in Congress as of a 2022 Open Secrets analysis. Our best wishes that he can do better than 4th next time. Two major lobbying groups, the National Shooting Sports Foundation and the American Suppressor Association. I mean,
Jesus, yeah. There's a group for silencers?
Yeah, that's a silencer group. Fought for the measure to be included in the bill. The fifth big winner of the bill is, so just to review, Cenk, we've gotten big business, we've gotten big pharma, we've gotten big oil, we've gotten big gun. Of course, we come back now to Wall Street.
Of course.
Our old friend Wall Street. Section 899 of both the House and Senate versions of the bill, assuming that presumes that the members of Congress got through 898, dubbed the revenge tax, would have raised taxes on inbound foreign investment from countries that tax US companies unfairly. Wall Street lobbied hard against the revenge tax. It was eventually cut from the bill. There are even more corporate handouts in the bill. For the sake of time, we've got to race through these. This is the rest of them. We'll do a lightning round here. Bill boosts defense spending by $150 billion. Private prison operators, our friends in the private prison industry, will get some cash from the $45 billion funding boost for ICE detention centers, of course. Companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin got a tax break. You know Elon Musk, you saw again at that same place where you saw Mark Zuckerberg, the inauguration of Donald Trump. You saw Jeff Bezos as well. And metallurgical coal companies got a new tax credit. I know we were concerned. Semiconductor companies got an expansion to a pre-existing tax credit. Finally, hedge fund and private equity managers, thank goodness, could breathe a sigh of relief after Trump stated he wanted to end the carried interest loophole, but declined to actually do so in his budget bill. Cenk, all the people you want to see happy come home happy after the July 4th weekend.
Yeah, it's a cornucopia of corporate pork. So everyone who—
Say that again.
Cornucopia of corporate pork.
Thank you.
So everyone who donated to these politicians got super rich with your money. So the oil and gas guys have $17 billion of subsidies every year. Now they're more unchecked, vague subsidies for whatever the hell you would like, because what difference does it make? It's just corruption. You're bribing me, I'm giving you the American taxpayers' money back. We don't even need a reason. They're not gonna even check, right? So great credit to Sludge, who reported on all this. This is probably the last time you'll see it, unless you keep watching the Young Turks, because we're obsessed with the corruption. Mainstream media will almost never mention this, barely mentioned it as the bill was being debated. Afterwards, you won't see it at all. You'll see tons and tons of talk about how Trump reduced taxes on tips and overtime. I mean, how many of these different carve-outs for corporations did you see being talked about at the same level? None, right? And so what does that create? For the average person who doesn't follow politics, you might think half this bill was about getting rid of taxes on tips and overtime, because right-wing media talks about it, then mainstream media talks about it, and there's almost no pushback. Now, do you know that those particular ones that went for the average guy, they were small, capped, and temporary. All of these giveaways to corporations are permanent and super expensive and drown out whatever you were gonna get on your tax on tips and overtime. So, and this is my point about the Uniparty. So Biden did the CHIPS Act, and I was told by Democrats that it was so monumental and wonderful and progressive. And I was like, nonsense. We might need it, but it's not at all progressive. It was a giant giveaway to corporations. It was a $54 billion subsidy. And what did the Republicans do? Oh, look at that, they didn't fight it at all. They added on top of it. Why? Because both parties serve the same corporate interests. It's all good cop, bad cop. It's all nonsense, right? So yes, the Republicans get way more money from oil and gas. That's why they give more to oil and gas. On the other hand, why didn't Joe Biden put forward a resolution to cut the $17 billion in oil and gas subsidies? Would have been the most popular bill that any president has ever proposed, right? They're the most profitable companies. They don't need our money, but they didn't do that. Why? It's not necessarily that Biden is corrupted, although he probably is on that count because he is on almost all counts, but it's because a ton of Democratic senators and congressmen also take greasy oil and gas money. But it goes for the whole list here. And look at how obvious and brazen they are. So Cornyn's like, well, I got $745,000 from the gun lobby, so I'm gonna be the main guy that gives the gun lobby all their loopholes. So hey, I'm the gun whore. Okay, so the gun, okay, here, make sure that the silencers pass and more people are murdered by assassins and snipers so they'll get panicked and buy more guns. I mean, who the hell needs a silencer? What do you need it for, a deer? No, you need to murder someone. By the way, a lot of times cops, like you're murdering cops. And that's why the cop killer bullets are legal. All this, you get untraceable guns are legal because the corporations own all of us. And then on big pharma, I mean, look at how obnoxious they are. They took their corporate pork bill and called it the Orphan Cares Act. Leave orphans out of this, you monsters. And I've told you, big pharma historically gives way more than a pack like AIPAC, right? And so AIPAC would give $4 billion a year for Israel. Now in this genocide, they got an extra $30 billion. Big Pharma is getting hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions of dollars. And how do they do that? They limit competition. You're not allowed to negotiate drug prices. You're not, and now their monopolies on their patents have been extended through this bill. And they get every goodie there is. And what is that? That's corporatism. That's when corporations actually try to kill off the free market because that's competition. Corporations don't want competition. Corporatism is opposed to capitalism. It doesn't want capitalism. It hates free markets. And the minute a corporation has enough power, they go purchase politicians to end free markets, to end competition, so they can keep robbing us day in and day out. And this so-called big beautiful bill was beautiful to corporate donors who robbed us blind in every part of this bill. And that's the real story of what happened in this bill. And I'm glad you guys know it, and you should spread the word.
Just on one point you make, and this all, of course, still goes back to money in politics. And were that not the case, these special interests would not be doing as well in a bill like this. And if money in politics were limited, that wouldn't happen. It should also be pointed out that uniparty or not, every single Democrat who was able to vote against this voted against this. And that while you can say uniparty, this was a Republican bill that passed, and they not only did they pass this bill, they eliminated debate on it in the Senate, so it went right back to the House, and then the House was able to push ahead with it and vote on it without any amendments. This was, the Democrats did all they could legislatively in terms of voting on this to separate themselves from the Republicans on this bill. I think it's important to point that out. In a macro way, you have good points about it. In a micro way, however, they did what they could do.
All right, last points out for me is, I mean, Michael's right. All the Democrats voted against it, and votes matter, so give them credit for that. And you could see who the most corrupt people are. James Lankford takes the most from the oil and gas industry, and he delivers most for the oil and gas industry. The whole world has a 15% minimum tax on corporations. The whole world. There was a global pact. But oil and gas industry in America is allowed to cheat. When, by the way, they're one of the most toxic industries in the world. They create climate change, and we have to pay all of their costs. Like that flooding in Texas, we're gonna pay for that. ExxonMobil isn't gonna pay for that. And then now they're not even gonna pay their taxes. Do you pay more than 15%? I bet you pay more than 15% in taxes. Now they're gonna get to pay less than that.
But this bill was for you. This bill was for you.
Oh yeah, this bill was for you. What a joke. But look, last thing on Michael's point. On the macro point, guys, carried interest loophole. It's a total crime. It makes no sense at all. It is income. It's income that the bankers get, private equity gets. When you get income, you get taxed the maximum possible rate in your bracket. They get taxed the minimum on their income. It's an absolute outrage. Republicans go, oh, golly gee, there's nothing we can do but extend it. And the Democrats go, oh, golly gee, there's nothing we can do. And both of their donors are massive private equity companies that give to both politicians. Don't tell me there isn't anything you can do. That carried interest loophole is one of the most unpopular policies in the country. I could defeat it in 2 weeks if you tried, and you called out the bankers, and you called out the corrupt. But no, our politicians also take the money. So shh, come on. I'm sick of this system. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.